Hey everyone, I know I already did a video of the Nexus 7 tablet against the Nexus 10 tablet, but it occurred to me that I was taking the most expensive device on Google Play against the cheapest. What I should have actually done is taken the Nexus 4 because its price point is in between and included that in the comparison. So this video is on the assumption that you have $400 to spend. You want to know which one is the best for your money. I'm going to go over the speaker test, gaming test, general, overall best bang for buck. So let's get straight into it, shall we? So let's talk dimensions first. The Nexus 4 is at 133.9 by 68.7 by 9.1 millimeters, weighing 139 grams. And that weight, even for a smartphone, is pretty light. It feels very nice. The Nexus 7 is 198.5 by 120 by 10.45 millimeters at 340 grams. And again, it has a fairly decent weight for a 7-inch tablet. Whereas the Nexus 10 is 263.8 by 177.8 by 8.9 millimeters, and it weighs 603 grams. Now, despite the Nexus 10 having 3 inches more on its screen than the Nexus 7, it weighs double the Nexus 7. So if you pick up both, you'll notice that the Nexus 10 is significantly heavier. As for the Nexus 4 display, it has a True HD IPS Plus 4.7-inch screen with a resolution of 768 by 1280 with approximately 320 ppi, protected by Corning Gorilla Glass 2. And you might be wondering, can you notice the clarity of the screen even though it's quite small compared to the other two devices? My answer is absolutely yes. This phone is extremely sharp, and you can notice it when you're looking at pictures, text, anything at all. The Nexus 7 has a backlit 7-inch IPS display with a resolution of 1280 by 800 and a 216 ppi. And the Nexus 10 has a gorgeous 10.055-inch WQXGA screen with a resolution of 2560 by 1600 with approximately 300 ppi, and is protected by Corning Gorilla Glass. So the way it works is like this. The Nexus 10 has by far the nicest screen out of the three. In fact, in the mobile industry, has one of the best screens on the market right now. The Nexus 4 has the second best screen, and the Nexus 7 has the worst screen. Don't get me wrong, it's still 720p HD. It's really sharp, but if you're comparing it this way, the Nexus 7 has the worst. The Nexus 4 has 2 gigs of RAM, the Nexus 7 has only 1 gig of RAM, and the Nexus 10 has 2 gigs of RAM. The Nexus 4 is sporting a 1.5 GHz quad-core Qualcomm S4 processor with a GPU Adreno 320. The Nexus 7 has an NVIDIA Tegra 3 quad-core processor at 1.2 GHz, Cortex A9. And of course, the Nexus 10 has a dual-core 1.7 GHz Cortex A15 Exynos 5 processor with a GPU Mali T604. Now, let's do quadrant score benchmarks. The Nexus 4 has a quad-core processor. It scored about 4,700. The Nexus 7 has a quad-core processor. It got 3,677. The Nexus 10 has a dual-core processor, however it scored 4,639, which is almost 1,000 more than the quad-core processor in the Nexus 7, and that's due to the excellent architecture and design Samsung has done with their Exynos chip. So the amount of cores doesn't defy speed, it's actually the design. So yeah, the Nexus 10 is actually better than the Nexus 7 in terms of general speed. In terms of snappiness though, just general responsiveness, the Nexus 10 is the best. And you can notice that the Nexus 4 does a pretty decent job, and the Nexus 7 is, well, slower. A good tablet, don't get me wrong, but just slower. All three of them are sporting a NFC chip for Android Beam. The Nexus 4 has an 8 megapixel rear camera with 1080p recording at 30 frames per second, and a front-facing 1.3 megapixel camera. Generally, I wasn't really impressed with the camera phone on this device. I was kind of disappointed. Actually, I'll put a video links to all the reviews of these devices in the description below so you can get more details about what I had to say about that. The Nexus 7 only has a front-facing camera with 1.2 megapixels, and the Nexus 10 has a rear, let me see if I can turn this around, rear 5 megapixel camera at 1080p recording with 30 frames per second, there's the flash, and a front-facing camera at 1.9 megapixels. The camera on the Nexus 10 is also pretty bad, but I don't know why you would want to use the rear camera on a tablet. It looks funny, but hey, it's your choice. The Nexus 4 has a 2100 milliamps lithium polymer battery. The Nexus 7 has 4,325 milliamps Li-ion battery, and of course the Nexus 10 has a humongous 9,000 milliamp lithium polymer battery. Now in terms of battery which one lasts the longest. The Nexus 10 lasts the longest, obviously. The Nexus 7 lasts the second longest, and the Nexus 4 lasts the least amount of time. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention, this is the Wi-Fi version of the Nexus 7. All three of them have the usual Wi-Fi, GPS, Bluetooth, etc. In terms of general feel, the Nexus 7, people have complained that it has like a glass, plastically back. Personally, you shouldn't be tossing a cell phone around anyway. You should be very careful with it. I'm more concerned about damaging the front than the back. So in terms of comfortableness, it's pretty good. But the Nexus 7 has this nice plasticky kind of rubbery grip. It feels nice in one hand, portrait or landscape. It actually feels better in one hand. If this was a 4-inch screen and it was a phone, it would feel better than the Nexus 4. The Nexus 10 is a lot bigger. It's heavier, obviously because it's bigger. Don't get me wrong, it's still comfortable to hold for a 10-inch tablet. It has a nice plasticky kind of rubbery grip at the back. For a 10-inch tablet, it's generally comfortable. The Nexus 7 is the most comfortable to me. But obviously the Nexus 4 is kind of a different category because it's a phone. All of them have a 3.5mm headphone jack, volume rockers up and down, power button, micro USB port for connecting to your computer or charging it, and of course the two tablets have this type of dock connector. This is where things differ a lot. The micro USB port on the Nexus 4 can also be used as slim port. So if you have a slim port adapter, according to Google, you can connect it to your HDMI TV and start streaming stuff instantly. The Nexus 7 does not have any HDMI support whatsoever, no matter which adapter you have. The Nexus 10 comes with the ready micro HDMI port here, which you can connect instantly. No adapters needed, just need a micro HDMI wire, and you can connect it to your HDMI HD TV. In terms of gaming performance, okay, this is another weird topic here. Let me explain. In terms of general smoothness, the Nexus 4, it plays games the smoothest out of all of them. In terms of graphics, it does fairly well on most games. Now the thing is, the Nexus 7, some games it looks the best on the Nexus 7, however, some games will perform very sluggish. And then again, some games perform the best on the Nexus 10, but they perform extremely sluggish. Overall for gaming, the Nexus 4 is the best. But if you were to compare between the two tablets, honestly, it's a toss-up. You don't know which one's going to perform great on the tablet and which one's going to perform bad. The issue is you won't know until you actually install the game and start running it. Sometimes it runs great on the Nexus 10, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it runs great on the Nexus 7, sometimes it doesn't. In terms of app compatibility, the Nexus 4 has the most app compatibility because it is a cell phone. Most apps are optimized for, cell phone sizes. The Nexus 4 and Nexus 10 both have notification LED lights here where I'm pointing. The Nexus 7 has no LED light, so if you miss a notification, you're going to have to actually turn on your device and then find out if you missed something or not. The best speaker is on the Nexus 10 because it has two speakers on each edge facing you, the user. The second best speaker is on the Nexus 7, which I guess is kind of a given because it's a tablet. It does have fairly powerful speakers, despite them being in the back. And yes, there are two speakers inside this one speaker grill. The Nexus 7, for a cell phone, has a very powerful speaker. However, compared to the other two, it has the worst. 1080p playback of videos, TV shows, perform generally the same on all three. They have random times when the frame rate will drop, but nothing that would ruin your movie or TV experience. Overall, pretty good, but still needs some work. Hopefully there will be a third-party app that can handle the codecs better, probably, because they're all very powerful devices. So let me give you a basic conclusion. If you're looking for an e-reader, all of them can do it. Everything looks the best on the Nexus 10. Let's put it that way. However, as an e-reader, the Nexus 7 is the perfect size. It fits in one hand. It's generally slightly bigger than your average novel, but it feels very comfortable to hold. The second best would obviously be the Nexus 10 because of its bigger screen. Yeah, you can read text on a phone, but quite honestly, I've tried reading some books on Google Books through the phone. It's just too small for my comfort. It is doable. The screen is very sharp, but it's just not that comfortable at all. The winner is the Nexus 7, then Nexus 10, then of course last place is the Nexus 4. In terms of the most portable, this is a given. The Nexus 4 is the most portable, then the Nexus 7. The Nexus 7 actually fits in some of my pockets in my pants. And actually, one funny thing is, I kid you not, once I was lined up in Wendy's, I saw a guy pull out his Nexus 7 out of his pocket. This is when the Wi-Fi only version existed, and started using it. See, yeah, the Nexus 10 is obviously the biggest. You're gonna need some sort of tablet case or carry-on or something in order to get it around. And it feels kind of weird holding it in portrait mode on top of that. Now, if you were to ask about the best device overall, it would have to be the Nexus 4, simply because it can do everything the other two tablets can, plus it's a phone on top of that. So honestly, that's the best. If you were to ask what's the best dollar value, so what's the best bang for buck, where should you spend your money? Say you have $400 to spend, should you buy the Nexus 10, 7, or 4? The Nexus 4 wins again, simply because its price point is in between the two. Like I said, it does everything both tablets can do, plus it's a phone on top of that. In my honest opinion, this might be a bit of a bold statement, but I'm going to say it. This is the best cell phone deal in the world ever. It's extremely powerful, there's no contract, and it's unlocked already as soon as you turn it on. Personally, you can't get a better deal than that. With that said, what's the second best choice between the two tablets? It's a bit of an argument because this is the most expensive device on Google Play and this is the cheapest, so it's really tough for me to answer. If you were to ask my personal opinion, this is just my opinion, okay? I would say the Nexus 7. Despite it having a lot of flaws and in a lot of the comparisons it ranked last, it's the cheapest and it does everything the Nexus 10 can, but at a lower performance. But again, the main thing to remember is that it does everything the Nexus 10 can, and it's really, really cheap. You'll be saving $200. But if you were to ask which one's the better tablet, not bang for buck, but just the better tablet, the Nexus 10 wins easily. No competition. The Nexus 7 can't compare to the Nexus 10. So that's basically my comparison of the three awesome Nexus devices. Very decently priced, I might add. So if you found this video useful, check out my website in the description below. Hit the like button, it does help. Subscribe, and thanks for watching.